This is Ben Moore, Finance Manager for the Office of Community Assistance, and this video will help walk you through budgeting for occupancy and telecom. And the occupancy categories include rent and utilities, and the budget line items that are referenced in this video are 109A and B and 111 for program support, and 309A and B and 311 for administration. The cost outline in this video are grouped together to include both the program support and direct administration lines. So please pay special attention to what lines are specifically required to be charged to admin, or apply those portions of cost that pertain to admin staff to the appropriate direct administration lines. For occupancy rent, 109A and 309A budget line items, the items that must be specifically charged to administration are the rent and space for administrative staff, and this typically consists of the executive director, fiscal officer, HR staff, payroll staff, those types of things that are pertain to the whole agency as opposed to just CSPG or specifically assisting customers. The minimum requirements for the cost grid portion of the occupancy rent tab, the requirements for that are you need to separate the rent by location. So if you have multiple intake sites or facilities that you utilize for this grant, please itemize the addresses and the properties separately when detailing the cost, and be sure that the calculation in the cost detail grid matches the calculation in the narrative. As far as the minimum requirements for the narrative section, for each location rented, you need to include the total monthly or total annual rent and the percentage charged to this grant. The basis used to determine the percentage charged for this grant should be square footage. If any other basis is used, there must be a clear explanation, and support must be provided as to why you're using an alternate basis other than square footage. In general, the items to be included in 109 and 309A, the occupancy rent category, are the space rental for program staff directly related to the operation of this grant. Line items 109 and 309B are the occupancy utilities in particular. Items that must be charged to admin for this category are the utilities for the administrative staff. Again, it should mirror the rental, the 109A, and that in the administrative portion would include executive director, fiscal officer, HR staff, payroll staff, and any other staff that pertain to the whole agency. The minimum requirements for the cost grid detail are that you need to separate the utilities by location, similar to the rent for those facilities. And you also need to be sure that the calculation in the cost detail grid matches the calculation in the narrative, very similar to rent. So any of the calculations that you put in the narrative that explain how you got the costs or how you're getting the monthly amount need to be very clear and need to match the cost detail grid. The minimum requirements for the narrative section of occupancy is that for each location, you need to include the total monthly or annual cost per utility and the percentage charged to this grant. The basis used to determine the percentage charged for this grant, again, should be square footage. If any other basis is used, clear explanation and support must be provided. Because in general, the utilities consumed are going to match the, or follow closely in the cost utilized in the rent category. Now, in general, the items to include in this category are simply the utilities for program operation of this grant. As far as telecom, the items that must be charged, or this is line items 111 and 311, the items that must be charged specifically to admin are landline, cell phones, internet charges, and any other telecom-related costs that are utilized for administrative staff. Again, executive director, fiscal officer, HR, payroll, those types of levels of staff. The minimum requirements for the cost grid detail are that you must list the cost for landlines, cell phones, internet separately. Specifically if they're billed separately, but if they're combined, you need to explain in the narrative what those costs cover. For the minimum requirements for the narrative section of telecom is that you need to include the total agency monthly or annual cost for each service and the percentage of that cost that is charged to this grant. Again, the basis used to determine the percentage charged for this grant should be most commonly the number of phones or computers. If any other basis is used, you need to clearly explain why and give some support as to why that is a reasonable basis. And in general, the items to include in telecom, again, are landline, cell phones, internet charges for staff directly involved with the operation of the program. There are separate videos available as guides for completing the individual cost tabs within the budget spreadsheet, so I encourage you to watch the other videos if you need assistance with the other budget categories, and I thank you for watching.